And we can go 15.
Hotep family, we're back with another impromptu Kemetic conversation with Professor Kabahia Wathakamane. And, this is our regular Thursday morning meeting. And normally we're doing digitanomics and working and talking about that, but we had so much to talk about in terms of what's happening with our children. And Kaba was just talking about coming back from Richmond, Virginia, and how he looks at these babies, our children. Those are African children. Those are black babies, as he says, that are experiencing a level of trauma that smacks of the experience we had, which ours was even worse because we were kidnapped and then separated from our parents. Whereas in this situation, their parents are fleeing and then the children are being separated. But the trauma imprint that is being placed epigenetically into these children and into the parents is immeasurable. And we were having this conversation, and I said, you know what? We probably need to record this and just give this to the give this conversation to the family. Welcome, Professor Kabahia Wathakamane.
Hotep, Brother Philippe. As you said, and because it's happening right now, and because it's fresh, and because it's raw, and we're feeling it. As you and I were speaking, I was telling you, having completed the X Factor, Chickens Have Come Home, that documentary that Heru and I, my son and I, did on Malcolm X. The research and the work is fresh. My research on what happened to his family, with his father dying. However the father may have died, he no longer was in the family. And he and his wife, Earl and Louise Little, having 7 children. And what happens when the insurance company doesn't want to pay you, when you don't have the money, you have 7 children to take care of? What happens to the family? And, Malcolm speaks of this, and his older brother Wilfred speaks about it also from the research that I did, and what actually happened to the family with that father being separated and then mother going to an institution, having had to deal with so much pressure in her life. So many of our members of our community have to go through. And then going to Richmond and preparing for those presentations, and Juneteenth Day, which was the celebration, and studying and understanding from the sister that shared the information with me, Omilade, who is the chairperson for the Ilegba Folklore Society, the organization that brought me into Richmond. Mm-hmm. And as I was going to my hotel, riding down Jefferson Davis Highway, knowing who Jefferson Davis was as an individual and what he did to peoples of African descent, and looking at all the Confederate flags as they flew freely. Speaking to the youth on Saturday, which was I spoke to the community on Friday, spoke to the children on Saturday, and spoke about what they should know, how they should prepare themselves for the future. Now, all this is going on at the same time that our brothers and sisters, children and parents who are fleeing situations that are not good for them, not good for the families. They're fleeing for a better opportunity. And they're coming up to the United States. And as I look at those children, I cannot help but see Black people. No matter if they speak Spanish, no matter if their hair is not as curly as many peoples of African descent, these are our brothers and sisters who speak Spanish. And they are looking from Honduras or from Guatemala or El Salvador, from Mexico. Wherever they're from, they're Black. And Dr. David Imhotep and Dr. Clyde Winters will take you through the process of who these people are. The Maya, the Inca, the Aztec, the Toltec, the Olmeca. These are Black people. These are African peoples. Mm-hmm. And so in reflection of what they're going through, my research also brought me to some of the research done by neuroscientists about what's happening to these children, the anxiety that they're feeling, the depressions that they're feeling, the alienation that they're feeling, the fear, the horror. But also on another level, they're coming to America for a better opportunity. And I don't in any way want to downplay their pain. These individuals suffering. But they were traveling for a better opportunity. Fundamentally, no matter how horrendous it may be, the beds that they're sleeping in could be better than the beds that they were sleeping in.
That they were fleeing from, yeah.
That they were fleeing from. The foods that they're eating could very well be better than the foods that they ate, the water that they drink. That's not to downplay the pain. But what I'm asking us as an African people, do we realize what we went through? We were not coming here for a better opportunity. We were stolen.
Kidnapped, absolutely.
Held in bondage against our will.
That's right.
Tortured. We had no counselors on the coast of America fighting for our rights. And I admire all of them who are there doing this work to protect and support them. That's not my point. My point is, what about us? What about us? And in attempting to find, as they're doing now, they're trying to return the children to the parents. Who cared about returning us to our parents?
Come on now. Yep. Absolutely.
As an African people, we have to analyze this and we have to ask ourselves, are we surprised at what's happening amongst us as a people?
No.
And this is the kind
and
of...
that's part of the conversation, too, that we had earlier, and that we were talking about, I forgot, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Lewandowski or whatever.
Yes.
Corey Lewandowski or Lewandowski.
Yes.
When he was making fun of the baby who had Down syndrome, and he was like, wah, wah, wah. When we talk about white fragility, when we talk about the axiology of the European, when we look at one that is completely thawed, that's how they are.
Yeah.
He codified, and of course the 45th, right? Because you know, this was all his doing, and all of those that are around him supporting him. When I don't know if it was Sessions or whoever it was that came out and used biblical quotes to justify this action. Now, understand that many, not all, but many Mexicans are Catholic faith, and so and Christianity, and so using that quote, biblical quote, use the same thing they did to us. And to justify they're doing to them.
That's right.
Look at the epigenetic axiological parallel.
Yes.
But these Europeans, this is who they are. This is the core of what created the America that we're living in right now. So this is a history lesson. We can look at what is happening right now and take that back 500 years.
Absolutely. And we are the people to do that.
Yes. Yes.
See, because remember,
we're the only people on the planet that can do this.
That's right.
No one else has this story.
No.
No one else has an African American story. Not taking anything away from my brothers and sisters in the Caribbean and outlying areas in various different parts. But this is Childish Gambino. This is America.
Yeah. And it's to be remembered that it was the Spanish from Spain that first brought Africans into this area. It was Africans brought into Central and South America. It was Africans brought into the Caribbean. It was Africans brought into Florida. when the Spaniards were here. California, named after Khalifa, the African woman.
Mm-hmm.
All the words, San Diego, Los Angeles, these are all Spanish words, Florida.
And isn't it interesting? This was Mexico's land.
Yes.
A lot of people, well, nobody, not a lot of people, nobody's talking about that.
Yeah.
That this was stolen, talking about another level of theft, this was stolen land from Mexico.
These were the indigenous people that were pushed south.
Yeah, they're just trying to go, if you will, come back home.
It's like the story that we talked about when someone invades your house and puts you in the room in the back.
Yeah, right.
And then you want to come out your room in the house that belonged to you, and they tell you that they're going to build a wall so you can't get back into your house.
That's right. That's right.
The first illegal aliens were Europeans.
Isn't it ironic that you created a DVD called Chickens Have Come Home?
Oh, yeah. That's it.
Isn't it ironic?
Yes.
Look at the history, family. It's repeating itself, but it's collapsing in real time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's fascinating to watch this.
And
painful too, because there's an epigenetic tag in us that allows us to feel and sense that pain that we see in those babies and mothers and fathers who are being torn, families who are being torn apart. We feel it differently than other ethnicities.
That's right.
As African Americans, we have an epigenetic axiological tag, a trigger from that nobody else in the world gets.
Yeah.
Because it is in us. It happened to our ancestors.
That's right.
It's how we and why we are here.
Yes. And we didn't come for a better opportunity.
No.
In fact, we left a better opportunity and came to hell.
Correct.
And it's important for us to understand another thing. These peoples that we call out, who are doing these atrocious acts, don't for 1 minute think that this bothers them.
It doesn't. Some of them relish it.
It excites them.
Yeah.
The pain inflicted on other people excites them, makes them happy and content to see pain. They enjoyed hearing those babies crying for their mommies and their daddies. They got off on that.
And let's be very clear, and this is even more painful to hear, that because some of us have been so successfully colonized and domesticated, some of us are enjoying hearing that as well. Because we're so disassociated and so disconnected,
yes, and
so successfully colonized that we have created a tragic trauma bond to those who oppress us. And we really, some of us are sitting up justifying, just as the Republicans were doing, and some of the Democrats, that this is something that's supposed to happen and should happen.
Absolutely.
If you are one of, you're probably not one of those persons watching this, because this is a different class of people with the 3 out of 100 here. But just, you know, because this is going to be on YouTube, somebody might come on for the first time to hear this. If in any way that what we are saying to you offends you, excellent, good. We want you to be offended, because if you are offended, it means that you have been successfully domesticated, colonized, and that trauma imprint has been put into you and placed into you to the point that you are no longer affected, you are now infected. And whatever that discourse you are feeling, saying, you know, what we're saying isn't true or isn't right or what have you, whatever pushback you might feel or have, that's actually your true Africana. That's your first frequency trying to wake you up and snap you out of the trauma bond and the sleep, the deep sleep that you've been put into. And that's why we do this work with the Kemetic Wisdom School. That's why we do all of these shows. That's why if you notice, we're doing a lot more work on trauma and having the conversation about trauma. And this, unfortunately, this event that is taking place in real time really, really speaks to our trauma. And it's interesting because there are voices on both sides that are saying this is wrong. So I don't know if those are Europeans who are trying to be unthawed or just have some level of empathy, sympathy that, you know, wrong is wrong, right is right. Wherever you're at on that scale, this is an American problem, an African-American story, but it affects the world. If we don't get this right, you can easily see how this can happen again. I had a conversation, you know, I had about 3 years ago with Dr. Joy, sitting down having coffee. And she said to me, you know, Philippe, and this was, you know, right after Trump got elected. She says, I wonder who were the people who sat up and said, who were the Jews that in Germany that sat up and said, you know, this could never happen. Yeah, that would never, nobody's ever going to go for something like that. But you begin to see how terror starts to be normalized. What is happening to these babies and to these families is an act of terror. You can't have trauma without terror, and you can't have terror without trauma. They're brothers and sisters. It's an act of terror, what is being done and how it is being done in the name of religion and in the name of government. Trump came out talking about how weak we look and we must look strong. This is the psychopathy, the sociopathy of the European. And the rest of the world, some who are at various different levels of unthawing, are beginning to look at this guy and America and those that are supporting him and saying, whoa, we might be messed up, but we ain't that messed up. You know what I'm saying, Kava?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And when I think of them claiming that MS-13, the reason why they don't want them coming is because of MS-13. I only think of them when they first came here. The gangs, they were the original MS-13.
Absolutely.
Came from Europe.
Absolutely.
And they wreaked havoc on the human beings that they came to be with. And they continued that havoc throughout all the years to this very day. Mm-hmm. And what you said was interesting with Dr. Joy, because they've done a lot of different studies on Nazi Germany. Mm-hmm. And you ask yourself, how could a total people or a near total people join behind a vicious, murderous dictator like Adolf Hitler? And then you see what's happening here in America. Mm-hmm. And you see the rallies that he goes to. Mm-hmm. And the things that they shout. See, all of this coming from Richmond and being with our people who extended great hospitality and wonder. While on one level you think about it, on another level you see how great we are as a people. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so this weekend and what's happening is just a reminder for us as a people to stop and wonder, where as a nation and where as a world are we going? That this man, because I remember growing up with Russia was the bear. Mm-hmm. That was our mortal enemy. Mm-hmm. Right up to Reagan, mm-hmm. to Bush, number one. Russia was an enemy. Not to mention what's happening in North Korea. But then you'd have to understand what happened in Korea and in Asia in the beginning of the 20th century. See, this is why history becomes very important. What would bring that family in North Korea to rise? What caused the Korean conflict?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What happened between Korea and Japan prior to World War II? What did Japan do to Korea? That don't need to be spoken of here because that's another type of subject. But that's why history is so important. And Malcolm said that history is the best subject that would do us the best good to understand. Korea just didn't appear out of the air. North Korea and South Korea did not have that conflict out of the air. You have to go back in history and understand what was happening in Asia in the early 1900s, late 1800s, to understand how that could rise and what made that happen. To understand what these children are going through at the hands of this man that the people support. It only takes me back to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Whereas I'm not one for an anthropomorphic God nor an anthropomorphic devil, but I do believe that people can act godlike and they can act devilish.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we got some folk that are acting very devilish.
And if we don't know the difference between chronological history and episodic history,
Mm-hmm.
We will make a critical miscalculation.
Yeah.
And you know the old term, history repeats itself.
Yes. Yes.
You have said this, I think, damn near in every show that you've ever been on, and that is we just have to be prepared, family. And we have to be emotionally, financially, mentally, spiritually prepared. Because if they blow this thing up, what are you going to do? If the country does go back to you and what have you, where are you going to be? How are you going to protect yourself, support yourself, and provide for your family? Because these people are showing you that nothing has changed. You know, we got so pompous, I guess could be the word, with Obama administration. Some even dare use post-racial America. And then you couldn't even fathom, some of you couldn't even fathom a Trump. You thought it was a reality show. Oh, he's a joke. He's a celebrity entertainer, reality show guy. You never thought that it could happen. Then it did. And when I say you, I'm not just talking about some of us. I'm talking about pretty much the world at large was making him a joke. And then you began to see his character. You began to see what a true, thawed, pineal gland European looks like. And then he wins. He gets in office. And the next day, you have what I call an OS moment. Oh, shit. What do we do now? Kaba constantly tells us that this is why we do what we do. This is why I launched the school. This is why he lectures around the world. This is why he does his Facebook Live every Sunday at 6 o'clock. This is why we do what we do. We have to prepare you. We have to prepare us. We should know. Do not expect them to change. Racism was the foundation. White supremacy, or what should I say, white fragility, was the foundation of America before the first meeting of Congress, before the Constitution was written. This ideology of humanity called white people was in place. And this ideology of humanity called white were given a certain set of privileges over all other people who were not white. And privilege stands for private law. So whites had a private law. And this is what you are dealing with. We are dealing with why we have this story, why we have our Ma'afa. Had that have not happened, history could have been completely different, but it isn't. So here we are. This is one of the reasons why you're one of our most exalted teachers, and why we call you professor, why we call you master teacher, is because you can help us navigate and get ready for what is seemingly inevitable to come or to happen. Differently, but still, the writing is kind of like on the wall. If they're doing this, what is that old saying? They come for you. It might have been Malcolm. They come for you in the light, and they'll come for us in the dark. Where did that come from?
Well, I've often said it in a way that they came after us at night so they could come after you the next day.
There you go. There you go. There you go. So how they're treating our Spanish-speaking Africans. What do you think they're going to do with you? What policy do you think they're going to tweak and shift, which they're already kind of doing in Chicago, my hometown, by bringing in the FBI, National Guard, and military to handle, quote unquote, the thug or the gangs? What policy change has to take place before that military action and what comes with that broadens and widens? What happens if you're just on a probationary, if you're a probationary felon? What policies could be put in place to corral 8 million African Americans? I didn't even know this. Michelle Alexander hit me to this, that there's 8 million people who are just on probationary felon alone. They're not in prison, but they are, they're on probation. And so it's like, whoa, what? You can kind of see that these guys, these Europeans, these 1%ers, in many ways are no different than the 1% of the colonial British who created the anti-miscegenation laws that put us in the situation that we are into today. This is America. Wake up.
It's a powerful time to live in. And as an African person, each and every one of us has to understand our history and our culture. And as you said, there has been great change in us, but they are the same people they were 500 years ago. They have an Ice Age mentality. I don't speak in absolutes, so I'm not saying everybody, but we have to be real clear on what we're experiencing as a people and not try to sugarcoat anything. These people act horribly.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not sorry that this is happening. They're just sorry that there was such a kickback to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They're sorry they got caught and called out.
And you see, the thing is that one of the things about fragility is part of what allows you to survive in your own mental prison is the fact that you believe you're going to get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of, the
arrogance,
the mindset.
Yeah.
The idea that you're going to get away with it. And as he's gotten away with everything, this, they say, is the first time that he's ever had to pull something back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even when he pulled it back, he said, we're still going to stay tough,
Mm-hmm.
but we're just going to keep the families together. So what they're doing now is, instead of separating the children and the parents, they're going to put both children and parents in prison together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So now the children are going to go to the prisons with the parents.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is how they're solving their problem.
Right. They're sick.
They're very sick.
They're sick.
And we have to understand this.
We are not sick people. We are sick from being around sick people.
That's it.
We're born into a hospital, a trauma center, that we don't know we're in a trauma center.
Yeah.
We don't know we're around mentally ill people. We don't know that we have, just by being born, we are infected by them.
Mm-hmm.
Infected. We're not just affected.
Yeah.
We are infected.
By their infestation.
By their infestation. Because they're the ones who originally came here and infested America.
That's it.
We were here 160,000 years.
That's right.
Prior to the arrival of any European or Spaniard. End of story. This is our land. So if anything is an infestation, these Africans that speak Spanish are not an infestation. If anything is an infestation, it's the original people 500 years ago that came here and infested this land.
The original illegal alien.
The original, I love that. The original illegal aliens are the Europeans. You heard it here first. You probably said it already and thinking it, but we just go put it out there and say this. You know, that's how they say the views and opinions expressed by, well, we expressing them. So these are our views and opinions. But they're not opinions. They're facts. It's science. Do your history. Look it up. It's right there. You always tell me, Kaba, don't believe nothing I tell you. Look it up.
Yeah.
Look it up. It's right there in your face. And when we had the conversation with Dr. William A. Smith, who is the brother who coined the term and the phrase and did the research called racial battle fatigue, what you're experiencing, what we are experiencing right now, and what we experience every day from the cradle to the grave is racial battle fatigue. What we are experiencing when we see these babies being ripped from their parents is PTSS, our post-traumatic slave syndrome, based on epigenetics. There's something guttural, cellular, neurobiological that we're experiencing, that we feel from seeing that, which is reinforcing those epigenetic tags of trauma. And then it goes into Dr. Nzinga's work, Dr. Nzinga Dalila's work of race-based traumatic stress, injury, and violence. What you are seeing is a violent and injurious act. And racism is an act of any form of racism, micro or macro aggression, is a form of terror. Terror creates trauma. I want you to really understand this, family, that this is a trauma response. And once we understand trauma and how it manifests and embeds itself in our bodies, we then can use processes through great healers that we have in the school and on the show to be able to remove that trauma from our bodies so that we can see what is actually happening. Because here's the problem. When we have trauma bond, a trauma bond is like Stockholm syndrome. You start to bond with the oppressor and make the pain okay so you can deal with it on a daily basis. And so as a result, you start to empathize and sympathize and say, oh, I can understand what he's trying to say. I can kind of see where they're trying to go with this. And that's when you're trauma bonded. That's when you have become so oppressed that you have become part of the problem, not part of the solution. Now, we use derogatory terms like coon or what have you, but we're just going to call it colonization, domestication, trauma bonding, Stockholm syndrome. These are the things that happen when you have been born into oppression and you don't even know you're born into it. Some of you are walking around thinking that you're free. And for the most part, you are, but you don't know what you are. You don't know what you are in because you can't recognize it because you can't see it. This is why it's called being woke. All of a sudden you wake up one day, somehow something happens, you see something, read something, watch a show, whatever. And then you have that aha moment and it's like, oh shit, I've been in the matrix all this time. I didn't know. Now you're able to see it for what it really is. And there's a level of emotions that you go through that you can't even explain because you're feeling those emotions for the first time at that level that they've never spiked before like this. So some of you are watching this and seeing what's being played out. And some of you can't sleep, you can't eat, you can't work, you're a mess. And it's because there's an epigenetic tag in you. There's a memory, a genetic memory of what you, your father, your mother, your great-grandfather, so on and so forth went through all the way up to now. It's in us. It's encoded in us. Kaba comes to us to try to put this in place so that we can understand what we have to do, what we need to do, and how we need to think about it, how we need to see it through African eyes to be able to deal with this on a daily basis. Because as my mom said, just before the dawn, it gets the darkest. It ain't over until we win. That's what Kaba says, but it also means that they ain't done yet. They ain't done acting out as a big of an asshole as you can possibly see a European act out. They're not done yet. So what am I saying? There's more to come. So we need to create that spiritual first frequency armor so that we can have a place to contextualize this, put it into a framework so we can work through this so that we don't further re-injure ourselves, or deepen that epigenetic genetic memory imprint in us even further. And no offense, there's nobody else better on the planet to be able to walk us through that journey than Kaba and many of the trauma experts, Ma'afa experts, if you will, that are a part of the Kemetic school, which is why we have this Kemetic conversation.
And that is one of the solutions for us, is to join the Kemetic Wisdom School and to be exposed to this information from a perspective that we need to hear. Because the reason why we're having this conversation is when we were doing our meeting, we decided that we needed to express our view towards this. That's how, as peoples of African-American descent, who would just like to express our feelings towards what's happening at the border to our brothers and sisters. And to be very clear, loving, respectful, with integrity, to understand and to have empathy and feeling for our brothers and sisters and to give them the support that they deserve. And at the same time, ask a simple question. What about us? What about us? If this is what's happening, and if neurosurgeons and neuroscientists are speaking of what's happening to these children and these parents with what they're going through, what about us over these past 400 years? What about us? And it would be good to end with this concept, because it's important that as we analyze this pain that we're going through, the fact that we're even alive to be able to hear this conversation, there's reason for celebration, because we're still here. And what didn't kill us made us stronger. And every generation with its pain made us immune to certain things. And it allowed us to analyze what we were experiencing and to be able to move to the next level and to survive. 50 years, we called to the communities, our brothers and sisters, who were coming from countries where they practiced Islam. As they came to America and went to Michigan and Detroit and New York, we told them, be with us. Stay with us. Support what we're doing, because one day they're going to come after you, because they see you as sand Negroes. To our brothers and sisters who spoke Spanish or French or Dutch, who came from other parts of the world who were Africans, we said, be with us, stay with us. Because they call you Negroes that don't speak English. We told them they came after us tonight so they can come after you in the morning. Well, morning is here, and it's time to wake up. Get woke, stay woke. Come to the Kemetic Wisdom School. Let's all join together once and for all, because Dr. John Henry Clark taught us the only difference between a Mexicano and a Puerto Rican and a Dominican, a Haitian, a Jamaican, or North Carolinian, a Richmond, Virginian, or a New Yorker, or someone from Sacramento, is a boat stop.
Yeah.
Let's come together now as a Pan-African people and understand what it is that we have to do to stick together, to stay together, and to respect each other. Because they don't care for any of us, and not only do they not care, but they derive enjoyment. They are joyous in our pain, because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that the white man's heaven is the black man's hell. And if that be true, then the black man's heaven is the white man's hell. So let's get some heaven up in here. Let's start to do what we have to do, because that's where we have to be at this point in time. We see it right around us. This is reminding us of what we've been through for 400 years. It's not pleasant, but it just reminds us that the fact that we're still here is cause for celebration.
Thank you for that, my brother.
Hotep.
Professor Kabahia Wathakamene, our master teacher. Happy good morning, family. Hotep.